fourth generation.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate. Uh-oh.
And welcome back to another spine-tingling edition of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. I am Fisher, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. And this segment is brought to you by rootsmagic.com. And this week on the show, got a couple of great guests. First, Paul Woodbury is going to be on from legacytree.com. He is the DNA specialist for them. And, of course, he had a lot of questions come his way at Roots Tech. And he's going to share some of those questions and answers that you're going to want to hear commonly asked about DNA, coming up in about 8 minutes. Then later in the show, Randy Seaver is here, one of the great bloggers in the industry. He's in the middle of something called a genealogy go-over. What is it? How does it work? Why is he doing it? You're going to find out a little bit later on in the show. Hey, just a reminder, by the way, if you haven't yet signed up for our weekly Genie newsletter, you can do that at extremegenes.com. We'd love to have you there. It's free, and we share all kinds of genealogical gold with you every week. We'd love to have you as part of our growing community. Right now, let's check in with David Allen Lambert, the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org, with our family histoire news for this week. Hello, David. How are you?
Well, let's see. I've just flown back in from Texas, and I'm about in 2 weeks to go to Denver. So I guess I can't be on the East Coast for very long before I have to fly someplace else. So delighted to check in with you.
You keep traveling like this, David, you're going to lose your accent.
That might be a problem for a Colorado man. Maybe I'll see him when I'm in Colorado. Alan Evans has an interesting genealogical claim to the throne of England.
Oh, yes, I know who you're talking about. This guy says he's going to succeed Queen Elizabeth, but out of great respect for her, he's going to wait until she passes before taking over the kingdom.
Yes, he descends for the right of primogeniture from the 5th century Welsh king Cuneda Welig, who, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, he founded the Kingdom of Wales. Before that, it was known as the Kingdom of Gondor.
Gondor, of course, yes.
Yes. So I think that if he is a descendant from this person, there must be literally thousands of others. So maybe he'll be monarch for a minute, and the new monarchy of England will pass every minute to a new descendant. What a nice way of sharing the throne.
Well, I want you to know, and in all seriousness, I reached out to this guy to try to get him on the show, and it didn't go very well. It was kind of like, this is a very legal matter. I can't talk to you about that. Can't talk to you about it. So it's just, okay. And he didn't sound English at all. For a guy who wants to be, England's king, he did not speak the king's English, if you know what I'm saying.
So if you're a descendant from this king of Gondor, please let us know at Extreme Genes. We'd like to find out if you have a right to the throne, too.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Okay, digging into a little bit of history in Philadelphia, a construction crew in Philadelphia actually has found nearly 60 coffins that were supposedly moved in the 19th century that were forgotten.
Yeah, these date back to like the 18th century, right? I mean, these are well-made coffins.
They are, and it's a Quaker cemetery, if I read correctly. And now they're obviously going into all of the archaeological work, and hopefully after some investigation, they'll be reinterred and they will rest in peace finally.
Yes.
Digging on the other side of the country, in San Francisco, California, as we've talked before about New York City, a lot of times backfill was used by old ships. And of course, in San Francisco, you have the gold rush of the 1840s and 50s, where people had come out to the west. These ships never returned to their home ports, were purchased as fill, and there's at least dozens of them in the city streets under San Francisco. And on a link that I will send for Extreme Genes listeners, you can find a map to where you might be standing over a vessel.
Wow, that is very cool.
The interesting thing is that you might be standing over the vessel that brought your ancestor to San Francisco. It's still in port.
Wow, yes, still in port.
Well, I'll tell you, springtime is fast approaching and never know it in New England. But if you got engaged recently or planning on getting engaged, do you know that during the Great Depression, the De Beers family held the rights of most of the diamonds in the world? So if you have an engagement ring that belonged to your family, during the Great Depression, it may not even have a diamond in it.
That's true, because before the 30s, diamond engagement rings weren't necessarily a big thing.
That's true. And so if you have the engagement ring of, say, a grandparent or a parent, take a look at it. Maybe a diamond was added after the fact, or they got a new and improved ring. I know when I got engaged, I was 18 and 19 with my spouse, and, well, I went to Bradley's and bought a $75 amethyst with diamond chips. So I can kind of relate.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about this is this diamond company, during the Depression, they started a marketing campaign to make engagement rings diamond. Anything less than that wasn't good enough for her, and it's been like that now for some 80 years.
This week's Blogger Spotlight is olivetreegenealogy.blogspot.com, and this is Lorine McGinnis Schulze blog. On her blog on March 3rd, she talks about an app called With Me. It's being developed by a South Korean who allows individuals to create avatars of deceased relatives, then take selfies with the avatar, and then have conversations with them through avatar via video.
Wow, that sounds a little creepy.
It really does, but I suppose if it's part of the mourning process, it might be a way to give some closure. But, I mean, if you're digging up pictures from ancestors who you don't know what they really look like,
right? They
don't know what they sound like, or their personalities, having video chats with somebody from before the Revolutionary War might be a little strange.
Yeah.
So check this out and more on Lorine's great blog, which we spotlight this week, which is olivetreegenealogy.blogspot.com. And don't forget, if you want to become a member of NEHGS and you've already become a free guest member of NEHGS, to become a full-fledged member, use the code EXTREME and save $20 on membership at AmericanAncestors.org. Well, that's all I have for you this week from Beantown Fish. Talk to you soon.
All right, my friend, thank you so much. And you can find links to all the things David was just talking about on our website under show notes at extremegenes.com. And coming up next from legacytree.com, our friend Paul Woodbury is going to talk DNA with us. Coming fresh off of Roots Tech, of course, he's heard a lot of questions about DNA. Things like, why do the older people need to be tested first? And what about ethnicity tests? What's the issue with some of those things? He'll have answers for you coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Did you know that Family Search Family Tree is available through a powerful new mobile app experience? That's right. Now you can view, edit, and even add information to ancestors in your family tree whenever and wherever you are. You no longer need to wait to get home or make a date with your computer to view or update your family tree. You can add details to your tree when visiting with family or when capturing details from a trip to the cemetery. You can share new family history discoveries from classroom settings. You can even make the most of your time when waiting for doctor appointments or car repairs. Get started today by downloading the free Family Search Family Tree app to your Apple or Android device. Visit familysearch.org/tree app to get the Family Tree app for free. Exploring and expanding your family tree has never been more convenient. Visit familysearch.org/tree app to download the Family Search Family Tree mobile app today.
Legacy Tree Genealogists is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've been working with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins or heirs to property. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476. Call now or register online to get a free estimate. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries. legacytree.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com.
And welcome back to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And this segment is brought to you by LegacyTree.com. And my good friend Paul Woodbury is on the phone from LegacyTree.com. And Paul, it was great to see you at Roots Tech. A lot of questions coming up about DNA, and I thought we'd kind of jump right into that. You were hearing a lot of them, weren't you?
Yes, we were. We had a lot of questions at Roots Tech, and actually, one of the things that we try to do at the conferences that we attend is our live DNA Q&A, where we host a live stream session on our Facebook page and answer questions about DNA. And this time we got a huge amount of questions, way more than we could even possibly get to. So some of the most common categories of DNA questions that we got were about ethnicity. You know, I have stories about Native American ancestry and it doesn't show up in my ethnicity. Why is that? Right. Or I should have 25% Scandinavian and I only have 20%. What's happening there? How reliable are they? So lots of questions about ethnicity. And then we also got lots of questions about who should I test in order to explore different DNA research questions.
Sure. Let's start with the ethnicity question because that does come up an awful lot. And maybe you can set me straight a little bit because I'm asked this question an awful lot about why I'm not seeing 25% Italian when my grandfather was full-blooded Italian. Is this because basically when you look at ethnicity tests really don't know the borders, right? They don't know which countries are supposed to be where, right?
Exactly. And really, with ethnicity, there are lots of considerations that you have to keep in mind. With the ethnicity estimates, they're exactly that. They are estimates based off of your DNA, where this DNA is coming from. Now, things can get really complicated when we try to draw boundaries of where DNA has been historically. What makes DNA unique in specific situations is when it's isolated for a long time. So if you have ancestors from an island population like the Azores, it's going to be really, really obvious that your ancestors came from the Azores because it's been isolated for a long time. It has had a lot of time to generate lots of unique mutations that make it easy to detect that that's where it's coming from. Mm-hmm. However, when you have populations moving back and forth and there's gene flow between those populations, it actually results in decreased genetic diversity, which makes it really hard to tell what is British versus what is Irish versus what is Scandinavian versus what is French or German.
And that, of course, is because Great Britain has had a lot of movement, right? With the Vikings coming in, how many years ago? 1,500 years ago now.
Exactly, and particularly with the Vikings, you get lots of Scandinavian influence all over Western Europe. Ireland, the Normans were the Northmen or were Vikings. And so you get lots of influence from the Vikings all throughout Western Europe. And so it's really hard to delineate those boundaries. My favorite example is what is French.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the individuals living in Brittany, they're much more closely related to individuals in the British Isles. If you look at individuals in Alsace-Lorraine, they're going to be really closely related to Germans. If you look at the individuals in the Basque Country and southern France, they're going to have a lot more Iberian DNA. And so it just goes to show that even depending where you are within modern-day boundaries of France, those boundaries aren't necessarily reflective of the genetic reality of those populations.
So do you think we're going to see a time, basically, where we're going to be able to say your genes were at this place at this time and kind of track that movement?
I think so. And at Roots Tech this year, there were several companies that were beginning to explore those. So there's exciting things on the forefront of ethnicity estimation and exploring where your ancestors were at specific times in history. However, I said this on our DNA Q&A, and I will repeat it here. I think that ethnicity estimates and ethnicity analysis are the ugly stepsisters of DNA. They get all the attention, they get all of the focus, when really your Cinderella is your DNA match list.
Yes.
That is what is most useful to you in your genetic genealogy research as you're incorporating it as part of your genealogical research. So we get an inordinate amount of questions regarding ethnicity saying, it doesn't match up exactly with what I expect. And yeah, we expect that to happen sometimes based on the random amount of DNA that comes down to you from your ancestors, and you may get 26% or 24% or 20% of Scandinavian rather than the exact amount that you're expecting. It's not going to reflect exactly your genealogical values.
Right. That's a really good point. And it's interesting you said that, because I was sitting at a dinner table with some people recently, and this whole topic of DNA came up, and we started talking about these other aspects of DNA. And he says, no, wait a minute. If it's not the ethnicity, what good is it? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So
yeah,
I think there's a lot of assumption of that, because you can see how many people match up to you that have no trees up. It's just that they were obviously doing it just to get the ethnicity report. But it's really pretty messy, isn't it?
It is. And I think that the ethnicity report is great because it does bring in all of those additional matches who are interested in that ethnicity breakdown. And it is exciting, and it can be useful in particular situations, particularly in recent ancestry if you're working with a brick wall in your recent ancestry. But by and large, most of what I do as a genetic genealogist is deal with DNA relatives, genetic match lists, and working and collaborating with those individuals to find out about our shared common heritage.
All right. Let's get to another question here that we heard a lot of at Roots Tech. Why test the older family members first?
Great. So with Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA testing, this isn't as much of a consideration because any Y-DNA that I get from my father came from his father. And so if I test my Y-DNA, it's going to represent my father's DNA and my grandfather's DNA and my paternal uncle's DNA, particularly for the Y chromosome. And same with the mitochondrial DNA, except along the direct maternal line. Where this question really comes into play is with the autosomal DNA.
Yep.
I get 50% of my DNA, my autosomal DNA, from my father, and I get 50% of it from my mother. And so if I perform a DNA test on myself, then if we consider it within the perspective of what I like to call coverage, 50% of my dad's DNA is in the autosomal DNA database, and 50% of my mom's DNA is in that autosomal DNA database.
Right.
But that's only 50% of their DNA. If I test them, I can get 100%. If I test my grandmother, I can get 100% of her DNA in that database to make connections with individuals across the database and to really preserve that DNA and have that as a resource for the future, even if she passes away in the future. And that is something that I did. People are sometimes surprised because I have been involved in genetic genealogy for quite a while, but I actually didn't perform DNA testing for myself until just 2 or 3 years ago.
And so this is really good stuff for chromosome mapping down the line for people who get really deep in the weeds with this.
Yes, and the reason for that is because I was testing all of my grandparents, all of my great aunts and uncles, all of my parents, my aunts and uncles, and additional relatives before I really got to myself. By doing that, I now have the autosomal DNA test results for my grandmother who has passed away. I have additional information for many of my relatives that I would not have otherwise. And so it's really important to test your older relatives before moving on to yourself. They're going to share double or quadruple the amount of DNA that you do with their close genetic cousins. And that's really important for making genealogical discoveries. By means of example, if I procrastinate that, then reconstructing and getting a full coverage of my grandmother's DNA, for example, would require me to test at least 4 of her children.
Really?
Yeah. So a child of an individual is going to inherit 50% from each parent.
Right.
Their sibling is also going to inherit 50% from each parent, but it'll be a different 50%. They'll share some DNA in common with their sibling and some not. If you look at 2 siblings who test, their DNA will cover about 75% of each of their parents' DNA. If you test 3 children of a couple, their combined DNA will cover about 87% of their parents' DNA.
Wow.
And if you test 4 children of a couple, their combined DNA will cover about 94% of that couple's DNA.
And that's assuming they have 4 children to test.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, if they don't have 4 living children, then you have to go down to the nieces and nephews, and you may have to end up doing 14 or 15 tests to even get 50% of their DNA covered.
So test the old people now.
Test the old people now. So, and you won't regret it in the future. I think that increasingly we want to treat DNA as we would any other genealogical resource. However, as genealogists, we benefit from a different perspective that archivists took earlier. They preserved records that we benefit from now.
Right.
And so in the DNA perspective, if we are going to benefit from DNA in the future, then we need to also start thinking as archivists and thinking about how we're going to preserve the DNA that's here now.
Boy, great advice. Paul, I wish we had more time because there are so many more questions. Let's continue this next time we talk in a month or so, okay?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right, Paul Woodbury from LegacyTree.com, and so great to chat with you again, Paul. And on the way next, I'll talk to Randy Seaver. He is the blogger behind GeneaMusings.com, talking about his personal genealogy go-over in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes.
Scientific studies have proven that youth who know even a little bit about their family history perform better academically and have a greater sense of personal confidence and stability. Genealogy is its own incredible superpower that arms our children with super strength. But how do you get your child or grandchild interested in studying their family history? That kind of stuff is just for grandmas, right? Not anymore. ZapTheGrandmaGap.com leaps the generation gap in a single bound. Author Janet Hovorka provides you with useful and timely advice on helping the young people in your life become engaged in their own family history. Janet has an entire collection of books to inspire the young and the young at heart in fun, interactive ways. She also offers creative tips and advice on her blog and in her free weekly newsletter. Stop by ZapTheGrandmaGap.com today to sign up for Janet's free email newsletter with 52 weeks of easy tips, free downloads, and order your set of resource books and workbooks. Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
And we are back. It is Extreme Genes, America's family history show, and extremegenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And this segment of the show is brought to you by FamilySearch.org. On the line with me right now, one of the bloggers we recently spotlighted that David Allen Lambert recently focused on. He is the man behind GeneaMusings.com, Randy Seaver. Randy, how are you? Great to have you back.
I'm fine, Scott. Good to talk to you.
You know, we like to catch up with our blogging friends and find out what's on their minds these days because, you know, everybody has something that kind of lights their fire at a given period of time. What are you working on right now?
Well, I tend to write a lot. 2 or 3 blog posts a day kind of keeps me busy.
Yes.
In the genealogy world and my own research, I find that I'm getting older, and consequently I'm thinking about what happens, next.
Uh-oh.
What happens at the end.
Uh-oh.
And so I want to write books, and I want to have a database that will live in perpetuity and things like that. And I want it to be good. I want it to be sourced. I want my descendants to know who their ancestors were and what they did and how they persevered. Consequently, I'm doing what's called a genealogy go-over. And basically, this is from the genealogy do-over that Thomas McKenty has been promoting and guiding for researchers on his GeneaBloggers blog. And he suggested this several years ago in order to refresh your research and maybe start over and source everything. And so the do-over was to put your current tree and documentation aside and start over, except for things that you paid for, like certificates or other documents you got from a researcher or something like that.
Don't you think there's a real emphasis right now on sourcing? I mean, it seems to be with Family Search, for instance. That's their big push, is to get people to go on there and link resources to their materials. And as you mentioned, Thomas, of course, has been pushing it. And I found myself doing much the same thing. It's really fun, and you find some things that you miss now and again.
Well, that's the whole idea, I think. You start with yourself and document your own profiles, and then do your parents and your siblings and your grandparents, and it goes from there. And people have done this, and Thomas laid out a whole year's program to do it. And basically, you're finding records and you're citing sources for every relationship and every event in someone's life. Most of us have trees we started a long time ago, and we didn't source anything. We didn't make notes. We copied out of other people's trees, things like that. I did that. Most of us have done that.
Isn't that kind of the mass crowd thinking? We always feel safe when we're copying the same thing that everybody else has?
Yeah, and we see beginning genealogists doing that because that's what they find. They find online trees, and they find books with their ancestors in it, and so they use that material. So my thing is, I didn't want to do that.
Right.
Because 3 years ago, I had a tree with about 45,000 people in it. And I had a lot of relationships and events that were not sourced. And my thought was, well, why don't I just try to improve what I have? I'm probably too old to start over and get to where I'd be in 5 years, say. So what I do now is 2 things. One is I have this 45,000-person tree. It's on Ancestry. It's on Family Search, Family Tree. It's on MyHeritage. It's on Find My Past. It's on Jenny. It's on WikiTree, etc. And so a lot of those places have hints.
Right.
And so I use the hints to find records and documents, and I source those events in my Roots Magic database. And this is ongoing. Almost every day I add, it seems like, about 1,000 sources a month.
Wow.
And so that's like 30 a day,
Yeah, I was going to say to you, Randy, that by using Roots Magic, then you're able to actually disseminate these things back out to all the trees, right?
That's kind of the theory, yeah. The trees out there, I have to keep the way they are so they generate the hints, and I can accept or ignore the hints on a rational basis so I don't duplicate the hints. I don't want to put a new tree out there and get another 40,000 hints that I've already looked at half of them, that type of thing.
Right, good point.
So that's the first part of it, is just refreshing and finding stuff that is, a lot of it is low-hanging fruit. It's the census records, it's the military records, it's now wills and probates.
Do you post your own circumstantial evidence that you've put together to come to some of your conclusions?
Yeah, I put those in notes. That's the next part. The first part is using the hints. The second part is I'm trying to enrich the profiles for each of my ancestors, meaning I concentrate on one ancestral family or one ancestor at a time and bring their profiles up to date. I go search on the websites, I look at the hints, I write down for a to-do list what I want to do at the Family History Library the next time I go, or a local library. And so I concentrate on one ancestral family and go through everything that I can on all the resources I have at home. And then I use weekly blog posts to document some of the things like transcriptions of wills and analysis of documents, land and pension and probate, and then extract information and analysis of records like vital or church or census. And then I have blog post themes every week for the transcriptions called Amanuensis Mundi. Amanuensis means one who transcribes. And I have about 360 of those now in my hopper. And then I also have a Treasure Chest Thursday theme for Thursdays, and I have about almost 400 records that I've analyzed. And every time I do this, I add the content into my Roots Magic database. So I'm enriching my database all the time.
Right. And then documenting exactly how you did it through your blog.
Exactly. And so based on the records and documents, then I create for this person that I'm focusing on an inclusive and consistent chronological life sketch in the notes in Roots Magic. And eventually I put that into the life sketch in Family Search Family Tree, too.
Do you find yourself focusing first on your direct lines? Because you mentioned a database of tens of thousands. I mean, to go through and redo all of them would be years and years worth, maybe more years than we all have in this world, right? And so, in my mind, I work with two different types of databases. I have my direct line, and then I have those with all the descendants in there. And when I go through, I really try to focus on the directs first because that's plenty big enough.
Exactly. I figured the ancestors are mine. The collaterals aren't mine.
That's right.
And I'm probably the only one researching most of them, at least in the last 8 or 10 generations.
Sure.
And consequently, I want to get a good enough biography that I could publish something about my ancestors. So then focused on a person and tried to update the sketch and things like that. Then I publish on the blog a new biography every week in a theme called 52 Ancestors in 52 Weeks. I do that on Friday. This is started by Amy Johnson Crow 3 years ago.
Right.
So I'm in the 4th year of this. I have 166 biographies now for my ancestors. And you think, well, that's not very many, but...
Ooh, I don't know. I think that's incredible.
This is kind of the power of blogging, too. One of the things this does for me is it keeps me focused on advancing my research. I can't let things ride. Otherwise, the hints get overwhelming. And so I publish that biography. I use an individual summary report template in Roots Magic to create the template of the model of it. And then I source all the events and also add sources to the life sketch narrative that I produce. After that, I add the source documents and the life sketch to Family Search Family Tree profiles for those folks. And so after 3 years, I have 166 biographies done, doing one a week. Now I have about, let's go back to your point, I have about 2,200 known ancestors back into the 1500s.
Right.
So I have my work cut out for me until about the year 2060. maybe my grandchildren will carry it on. I don't know.
I think your doctors have their work cut out for them for till 2060. He's Randy Seaver. He's the blogger behind GeneaMusings.com. What a great idea to hear how you're doing with your genealogy go-over. Thanks so much for your time, Randy, and good to have you back on again.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Good talking to you.
And coming up next, it is our Preservation Authority, Tom Perry, answering another listener question, frankly, one that's got me just a little concerned. That's coming up for you in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Everybody needs a place of their own to plant their family tree, preferably one that no one else can mess with and only you can control. That perfect place is Roots Magic. Roots Magic has been a family history standard for years, and now Roots Magic 7 is on the market. It's an award-winning genealogical software program which makes researching, organizing, and sharing your family history easy. You can start from scratch or import data from other software, or even Family Search. Roots Magic also automatically finds records relating to your ancestors from MyHeritage, Family Search, and soon Ancestry and Find My Past. You can use it to create beautiful charts, reports, and books. And have you ever thought about making your own family history website? Roots Magic can make that happen too. And of course, there are free videos, guides, and technical support to help you along. Isn't it about time you planted your family tree? Whether you're a beginning genie or experienced professional, Roots Magic is the perfect tool for you.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com.
Well, genies, my personal family history researcher who sends me new information day and night has sent me some incredible new records and newspaper stories lately. Hi, it's Fisher, and the name of that researcher, by the way, is myheritage.com. It's the hardest working service in genealogy, looking for records of your family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, even while you're sleeping. How does it work? MyHeritage uses hundreds of algorithms to match your ancestors to over 5 billion records from around the world, and with 97% accuracy. That means no more wasting time figuring out whether or not a match really is a match. I hear from listeners all the time who are shocked with how much information is accurately found and then passed along. And now MyHeritage will translate your ancestors' names into English or any other language you like from foreign records. In fact, it works with over 40 languages. No one else does this. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned researcher, you need myheritage.com. It is time to talk preservation on Extreme Genes, America's family history show, and extremegenes.com. I am Fisher, your radio root sleuth. That is Tom Perry from tmcplace.com. He is our preservation authority. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hello, super.
All right. Our email today is from Dennis Lisenby, and I don't know what he's talking about here. This is the alphabet soup thing. And so, if you're all sitting there thinking, oh, man, he knows everything about it, forget it. Listen to this. Can you digitize Betacam SP and DVC Pro HD to ProRes on my hard drive? What the heck does that mean, Tom?
Yes, we can.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
There's professional formats like TV stations use when they're shooting music videos, any high-end stuff. Betacam SP is one of the best tape formats they had. After that came Digibeta, but Betacam was really good. Remember the old Betamax from the old days that lost to VHS?
In the 70s.
Right. Even though it was a better format, it lost out. So Sony thought, okay, we messed up. Let's take Betamax and see what we can do. They came out with Betacam, which is like incredible. That's what all the studios used to use back in the day, and all the TV stations. Everybody used Betacam. Then they had Betacam SP and Digibeta. And then later on, they came out with another one called DVC Pro, which was Panasonic's real high-end thing to compete with Betacam.
How do you keep track of all this stuff?
I don't know. Somehow it's in the cobwebs upstairs. And so basically what happened is everybody tried working together again, and so Panasonic came out with DVC Pro, and Sony came out with DV-Cam, and they were supposed to be universal, and at the last minute, they had a parting of ways, and they weren't. So these are professional formats. They're still around. You can still get the equipment. When these first came out, the decks were like $30,000.
Whoa.
They were very, very expensive. And so I'm assuming from Dennis that he's has some stuff from maybe when he used to work in a TV station, or maybe he shot professional NFL, but now he wants to put them in high definition so he can edit them. And so now what ProRes is kind of new. It's what Apple developed for Final Cuts Pro. It's the absolute best way to preserve something without compressing it, like when you go into MP4s or AVIs or MOVs, they compress them. So ProRes is totally uncompressed, so it's absolutely awesome. And we do this a lot with film. When we're scanning film for people, if they're making a documentary, like we just did something for somebody a couple weeks ago that they're making a Elizabeth Smart documentary, and so what we had to do is we had to do that in a higher format so that they could edit it and do the right things with it. The drawback to ProRes, if you want to call it a drawback, it can only be used with Final Cuts Pro, which is an Apple product. So your Windows, it won't do you any good. You won't be able to get to this high of quality. You've got to get a Mac, and this is a good reason to go buy a Mac.
Okay. Is this something that people will use for genealogy generally?
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, we have, and we've talked about this on the show before, you have to figure out what your end game is, where you want to be at the end when you're all done transferring, scanning, all these kind of things, what your ultimate goal is, and then work backwards to find out where you need to start. You know, if you're going to be running a trucking company hauling dirt, you don't want a station wagon, you want something with an open bed.
Sure.
So same thing, people need to call us or whoever your local transfer people are and say, okay, my goal is to have these slides just so I can watch them on the computer. I'm never going to make prints, any of this kind of stuff. So you don't have to do like 3,400 DPI if that's all you're going to be doing. So save you some money. So basically tied onto this same thing, we just within the last couple of weeks upgraded our film scanner. Now it's even better. It's called a Universal HD. And you look at our old stuff and it looks great that we were doing 2 months ago.
Sure.
But you look at this, and if you get really, really close, it's even sharper. And it's like, okay, this is crazy. So that's why we say don't ever throw anything that's optical away, whether it's slides, film, negatives, because there's always going to be something better. And we have this now.
When are we going to get to the top of the mountain, Tom?
Probably about the same time the meteor hits the earth and destroys it.
Yeah. All right. This segment is brought to you by 23andme.com DNA. What do we got coming up next?
Let's talk some more about editing and some different things that you can do to improve your quality of what you're doing on your transfers, and also some ways to save some money.
All right. Coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
When was the last time you heard your grandmother's voice or saw your family enjoying life back in the 1950s or 60s? If the reason is you haven't known what to do with your old recordings, videos, and films, here's your answer. The Multimedia Center in Salt Lake City.
We brought in a video project to the Multimedia Center, and overnight they duplicated it to DVD so we could meet our deadline.
The Multimedia Center, 2870 East, 3300 South, Salt Lake City. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Call 801-483-1717 or go to transferduplication.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com. at.me.com.
Genies, it's Fisher with exciting news. The Weekly Genie, the official newsletter of Extreme Genes, is here. It's your Monday morning briefing on what's happening in the world of genealogy and family history and on Extreme Genes. Get all the details of jaw-dropping stories of discovery and keep up with the latest techniques in family history research. Get to know more about your favorite Extreme Genes personalities. And it's free. Sign up for the Weekly Genie now at extremegenes.com or the Extreme Genes Facebook page. And when you do, you'll receive David Allen Lambert's Top 10 Tips for Beginning Genealogists from the Chief Genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society. Sign up today for the Weekly Genie. I got to admit, Tom, I still get a little intimidated when I hear all this alphabet soup when it comes to technology. It is Fisher here, the Radio Root Sleuth on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com. We're talking preservation with Tom Perry, and this email we got from Dennis is about things I've never heard of, and that frightens me.
No problem. That's why I'm across the table from you.
Yes, exactly. All right. Most people don't need things to this level, obviously, which is why most of us have never heard of some of these things. You know, the DVC Pro HD, Betacam SP.
Exactly.
This is professional stuff. So let's talk a little about what people generally need and the best way to go about it and the best way to save money.
Absolutely. And kind of we left off in the last segment about this. You need to find out what your end goal is. And I tell people, don't say, I can't afford this right now, I'm going to put it off. If you can't afford the deluxe program, do something basic to at least get it stopped from your needing more color correction because they fade. You know, they fade day to day to day. So what you need to do is when you're calling your transfer place, whether it's us or anybody else out there, we always tell you what questions to ask. Make sure they're scanning your film. If they say they're scanning, say, oh, I want JPEGs with all my frames as well. And if they say, oh, that's not an option, then walk away because they're not really scanning.
Okay, but his email had to do with videos, right?
Right.
But that could also cover film.
Exactly. Anything's going to deteriorate. And so with film, like we were talking about, this new Universal HD we have, which is sharper than the old. I mean, the old is incredible, and this is even more incredible. But sometimes people say, I just want to get something really inexpensive. I can't afford the high definition stuff. Your high definition, which is 1080p by 16 by 9, if you ever look for a new TV, you know what those numbers mean. And it's great. It's more than what anybody out there needs. And it generally runs, if the people are being legit and really doing that, it runs about 22 cents a foot. That's what we would charge. Most good people around you're going to charge.
And that's video and film?
No, that's film only.
Film only, all right.
Film is charged by the foot, where video is usually charged by the minute or the hour.
Okay.
So with this, if you say, hey, that's great, I've got 10,000 feet or 1,000 feet or 500 feet, and I'd really love to do it, but there's no way in the world I can afford it right now. Well, we have another option, as most of the other people out there do too. It's still scanned, it's still high definition, but instead of being 1080p 16 by 9, it's 960 by 720, which is what the old widescreen TVs were. It still looks great.
So this is like the old formatting, and we see, like we watch some TV shows once in a while, and they say this has been reformatted so it'll fit your television. This is kind of the original dimensions?
It's just that if you get real close to the image, so to speak, and if you could actually see the dots like you can in a newspaper photograph, there's going to be more dots in the 1080p 60 by 9 than there is in the 960 by 720. So if you go into like a store that sells televisions, they're going to have a whole bunch of televisions up there, and they're usually all playing the same video feed.
Right.
So you can go to some that say 1080p by 16 by 9, and other ones are going to say 960 by 720, so you can physically see the difference. And if you look at that and say, hey, I really do like the 1080p, however, the 960 is okay, and we can do that now. So then you're only looking about 14 cents a foot.
Wow.
So it's quite a bit cheaper, especially if you have a ton.
At least, yeah.
So that's the way to go. So talk to your people. Make sure you ask the right questions. It's still scanned. It's still frame by frame. It just doesn't have the resolution that the 1080p has. So if it's like, hey, I can afford to do the 14 cents a foot right now. I'd love to do the 22, but I can't. Then do it. Get it done. Get it stopped from fading and get it all transferred, because maybe your kids one day, they'll have more money and they'll want to go and do it the other way. And then you can go into color correction and get DaVinci, which we've talked about before, which is a great program that's free. And with those programs, you can edit on either Windows or Mac. And then let us know whether you want AVIs, if you want MOVs, if you want MP4s.
All right. Ask Tom at tmcplace.com. Good to see you again, Tom. Thanks.
You bet. My pleasure.
Hey, that's a wrap on this week's show. This segment has been brought to you by MyHeritage.com. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to go to ExtremeGenes.com or our Facebook page and get signed up for our weekly Genie newsletter. We've got links to all kinds of great interviews, past and present, some great stories, and I give you a column each week. And if you missed any of the show, don't forget to catch the podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and ExtremeGenes.com. Talk to you next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.